All right, everybody, it's 1:01, almost 1:02 now, and I'm about to start today's online meeting for Computer Science 30S. Feel free, if you join the meeting, to ask any questions you'd like. This is our second recorded meeting using Microsoft Teams, and today's goal is to go over the arrays example. I think it's a valuable tool for you to do the example because you'll have lots of sample code and get a feel for it. Now I'm just going to share my screen. So from my website to the 30S website, from the 30S website, if you scroll down, I'm now, as you can see here, in week 10. And we're going to be looking at the arrays content today. So yeah, there's a folder full of stuff. There's videos, presentations, an example that's in the archive, etc. So you can go to GitHub and get the example that we've been working on. And actually, that's what I'm going to suggest that you start with, is that you go to that example of the 30S thing and download it, so then you have a good starting spot. You have the same spot I'm going to start with today. Now, there is a PDF of an older example you could scroll through and do as well. That's fine. That also gives you the same content. I would recommend, absolutely, I'm not going to really teach. I'm not really going to teach this today like I would teach it with in class, because the content of it, I suggest that you read through or watch the 3 arrays videos that I've made in the past where I go through the specifics of it. Today, what I want to focus on is just the example itself. So right from our example that we've been working on all year, you can download this example unless you already have it. And we're going to make a method called learn arrays, and we're going to fill it in with all the content today. That's the goal for today's class, is to do that, is to essentially complete the arrays example. Next week, week 11, what I'd like to do is do a walkthrough on one of the arrays assessment problems. Essentially do one of the problems like I would do again in class with you guys. Now, this is just the schedule I've set up. It's a little slower than the schedule maybe that you're on. You might already be working in arrays. That's entirely up to you. But I just wanted to set the schedule to give you a basic sort of framework for continuing your learning along during our school closure. Okay, so let's dive right in. I'm hoping this will take between half an hour and 45 minutes. So again, I will explain arrays a little bit as I do the example, but for the most part, what I want to do is just dive right into the code and essentially do the example live for you guys. All right, so what I'm going to do to start is I'm going to make a variable called size. It's a regular variable, okay? We already know what a variable like that is. It's a variable that just defines an integer, and it's written in that way. Now what I'm going to do below that is declare an array. Arrays is a group or a list of things. So in this case, I'm going to make an integer array. I'm going to call it array. And the hint when you're using arrays, the code hint, is the use of those square brackets. Anytime you see those squared brackets, that indicates that we're dealing with an array. Just like round brackets indicate that we're dealing with a method. Okay. Now you have to keep going. Equals new int of this size. I could have also put the number 5 directly right here, or the number 50, or whatever. And what it does is it builds up an array structure with 5 spots to put various things in there, or various elements into the array. Again, if I'm not making a lot of sense, go into the notes where you will see much more about what an array is and how to use it. Okay, so the name for the individual spots in the array can also be called the subscript of the array, or the element, or the index, or the plural of index, indices. And when you create an array at first, when this array is created right here, we don't know what's in the array. It's essentially unknown what's in there. All right. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put some stuff into that array. We're going to assign some spots. Values are going to get put into the array. Array spot 0, 25. Array spot 1 equals 18. Array spot 2 equals negative 21. As long as I'm putting integers into this array, I can use any type of integer. Array spot equals 621. Also, although it's covered in the video, arrays start their index at 0. This is a bit strange. So since this is an array of size 5, it'll be spot 0, 1, 2, 3, and spot 4. That would be the last spot in the array. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. So now all 5 spots are filled. A possible error we would make if it was to go out of bounds would be to, for example, set spot 5 to be the number 99. This would be a problem because there is no spot 5. Now I'm just going to bring that code to life and just quickly run that to show you the error that would occur. And there you can see, it even says that the index is out of bounds at spot 5. So it tells you quite a bit right in the error itself. All right. Other possible errors we could get, out of bounds errors, could include numbers like 2.5. That's obviously not a valid index number. Can't go between 2 spots. Or -1, that also goes outside the bounds of the array. So those would give you range errors. All right, next thing we're going to do, we're going to create an array that has no size to it. This is something you can do with arrays. This time we'll call our array A. Okay, oops. Let's back up. I'm going to make this an array of type double. This time I'm going to put the square brackets for the array beside the data type, whereas in the previous array, square brackets beside the name of the array. In Java, you have the option to do either of those. Not every programming language, but definitely Java does give you that option. So that's an array that has no size to it whatsoever. Okay. Now, the point of that would be that later on, you would want to recreate the array, or the proper term would be redimension the array. So to do that, I'm going to say A. I don't need to declare it as a double anymore. It already knows that A is a double. It already knows that it's going to store an array. But now I can say it's a new double of size 3. So now the initial array, A, had no size to it. There was nothing there. Now on this line, what array has is it's now an array that has 3 empty spots waiting for you to put doubles inside of it. Okay, so let's put some doubles inside. Let's fill it up. Okay, so A spot 0 equals 1.8. Oops, 1.1. And we're going to fill spots 1 and 2, 2.2, and 3.3. There. Now our array actually has content in it. So now our array called A is not only built, not only has 3 spots, those 3 spots are indexed 0, 1, and 2, but the array has content inside it. A 1.1, a 2.2, and a 3.3 is all sitting inside this array called A at this point. All right. Now, here's the next neat thing you can do. You created the array initially empty. You recreated it or redimensioned it of size 3. You put content into it. Now what I can do is redimension it again. A equals a new double size 500. Now it would be much larger. Can now hold 500 doubles. This is possible, but it is an important thing to note that every time you recreate it, it will destroy the content that was inside of it. It wipes it out. Okay, so although you can redimension arrays, just know that that is something you can do. All right. Going very quickly through this example, I definitely recommend you watch the video, which goes in much more detail as to how to do this. Another option you could do is if you go to the 30S week by week, I think it starts in week 8, where I start talking about arrays. Yeah, here it is. And in week 8, you can read through the content here of what an array is, and then you can read through the code, and it explains it in much more detail than what I'm doing here. It also then, same as I'm doing, goes into the example and adds the code to it piece by piece. Okay, so that's another way to do this. All right, so another way to create an array is to create one with pre-filled values. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to make another double array, oops, called, in this case, I'm going to call it coins, Canadian coins. This time, when you create an array like this, you use curly brackets on this side, and inside the curly brackets, you give it the values that you want to fill the array with. So I'm going to put 0.05, 0.10, that's a nickel, a dime, 0.25, a quarter, 0, a dollar, 2.00. So that would represent Canadian coins right here. But what it does when you create an array this way is it automatically sets the size for you. It automatically divides it up. It automatically indexes it. So this will be size 5 array, index 0 to 4, and it automatically puts the content inside. So the nickel, the dime, the quarter, the loonie, and the toonie would already be put inside there. So these types of arrays are useful when you know what's going inside. Okay. Now, as a slight variation on that, you can also do this, create pre-filled arrays and make them constants. So I'm going to do that next. I'm going to make a string array called options. So again, it's a constant, so I'm going to make it written in all capital letters. Use a little more space. Pretend like this is an array of stuff for a game that I was, say, making. So say I was making this game, and these were the options in the game itself. New game, save game. These were all the options of the game itself. So this is also a pre-filled array, but the keyword final makes it a locked-in constant, and the all caps spelling also is a clue for that. So that's another option there for making arrays. All right, so now we know how to make arrays in different ways. So from the first time we made an array just by giving it a size and then putting stuff in it, to then making empty arrays and resizing them, to making pre-filled arrays. We have lots of different options there now. So now, how do I use arrays? Well, arrays are used just like variables, okay? So they are basically fancier versions of variables. So for example, if I'm going to make an array called numbers, and I'm going to make a new integer array of 100 spots. Okay, then I can do stuff with that array. Now, I do want to point out one other thing. When you name an array, in this case I called it numbers, arrays, a good style type for naming arrays is to use pluralized words. Whereas with regular variables, we use single words like name or age. Arrays, because they're initially holding a whole bunch of stuff, would be things like names with a plural, ages, or in this case, numbers. Try to use plural words for the names of your arrays. All right, so I'm going to say numbers, spot 99, oops, equals 99. So I've just put a number into spot 99 of this array. And the number I put in there was a 99. Okay. All right, next up. When I output an array spot or an array index, I do it the same way I would output a variable. So I would say, oh, okay, I'm going to output numbers spot 99. Sure. Okay, so at this point, I think I can run that. So this would actually output spot 99, which holds the number 99. Let's see if that actually works. There it is, right? So there's the number 99 getting outputted onto the screen, the exact way we thought it would. Okay, now I'm going to do some operations on this array. I'm going to do some math, essentially, an equation. So I'm going to say numbers spot 0 equals numbers spot 99 plus numbers 99. No problem. That will then put the answer of 99 plus 99 into spot 0. And I can actually test that if I'd like. I could output spot 0 to see that it actually did the math that I was expecting it to do. And absolutely did, as you can see here. Okay, next up, when dealing with the entire array, in this case, I'm going to traverse, or go through. This is where the power of the for loop comes in handy. For loops are actually built for arrays. So we already know we can type a for loop quite quickly. And in this case, I'm going to put 100 because that's the size of my array. But remember how for loops initially start at 0, just like arrays do. This initially says keep going while you're less than 100. So in other words, it'll never reach 100. It will get all the way to 99, which is perfect because that's exactly what our array does. It goes from 0 to 99, which is 100 spots. So the for loop is built for arrays. And all I'm going to do is output what's in numbers at spot I. So here again is a beautiful thing you can do with arrays. I have 100 possible spots, and I can use the for loop in 3 lines of code to go through all 100 of them, rather than write 100 lines of code. That's one of the benefits, again, of using giant groups of data like the array does, and then using automated features like the for loop, which is now, as you can see, done 100 lines of code, right? So 99 was the last spot, and if I go all the way to the top, 198 was the first spot. Okay, we are cooking along here in this example. All right, now I'm going to do this again. I'm going to output the entire array again, but this time I'm going to write the for loop slightly different. I'm going to say numbers, but then I'm going to put a dot because built into every array, without you having to do any work, is a length feature. The length feature is by default, dot length, built into all arrays. And that way I don't have to remember that the array is 100 spots long. It just knows that it does it. And I'm just going to, it's automatically going to do the same thing that this for loop did. The benefit of doing it this way, and this is the way I definitely recommend, is you don't accidentally make a mistake. And if you ever change the size of an array, you would have to change this code, but you would not have to change this code, and it would still work. Okay, so always try to use the dot length feature. Don't just type in the number. That's not going to work as well. All right, the next thing we're going to look at is how arrays operate with methods. So what we're going to do is we're going to write a method called output. And we're going to give it our array of numbers. Now, if we were to open up our little side panel here, the Navigator panel, we actually have 2 methods called output that we did in our methods unit. One outputs a string of text. The other one outputs 2 strings of text, one for the title and one for the text itself. But neither of them work with an array. You might remember from the methods unit when we have two arrays with, or pardon me, two methods with the same name, but different parameters. That's called overloading. So what we're about to do is overload the output method again. So I'm going to create a method called output, not change a method. So it creates it. I'm going to jump to that method. And I'm going to key it in. Okay. All right. I actually have the comment ready for it. So this method outputs an array of integer values, okay, automatically for us. And just one sec. Okay, the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to make a string of text, the word array equals, and then a square bracket. Okay. At the end of this method, I'm going to output that text. That method already exists from our previous unit. It just puts it on the screen. Okay. I'm going to once again use the for loop and go to, and I'm going to rename this instead of numbers. I'm going to rename it array. Okay. So I'm going to go to array.length. Okay. I'm going to say that text variable equals that text variable plus, and this is shorthand. We learned that in the first unit. That means text equals text plus. Okay. The array at spot I. Okay. Plus comma. So I'm going to put a comma in between each spot. Just before I output it, I'm going to once again say text equals text. This time I'm not using the shorthand, plus a closing square bracket. And then it outputs it. So the idea here is this method output, which I'm just going to go back to right here, will spit the entire array of numbers onto the screen. Let's see what that does. And there it is. This time it's using the message dialog box, but there's the first spot all the way up to the 100th spot. And it put it all into a big string and then spit it out into a dialog box. Really handy. Okay, so that was really neat. Okay, that was me building a method that outputs an entire array of integers. What I want to actually do next is, rather than call the method directly, I'm going to write the method myself. I'm going to write a method, a private. So I'm writing this just underneath the output method we just finished. Private static, okay, void, another method called output. This one uses an array of doubles. It looks almost like this one up here. The only difference is instead of integers, it's using doubles. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another array called A by converting my array into an array of integers. So what I'm showing here is an array can be sent as a parameter to a method, but this method convert will actually return an entire array. And now that it's an array of integers, I will output it, which will call upon this method up here. Okay, so now I've got to make a method called convert. The light bulb for this one, create a method called convert. I've actually already got the comment ready. So convert takes an array of doubles, converts it to an array of integers, and returns it. All right, so let's do this. I'm going to make an array, which is a new integer array, and the length of it I get from the other array. So I can take the length of one array and use it to build the next array, the array of integers. At the end of this method, that new array of integers will be returned. I will return the completed array. Okay. So up here, I created an empty array of the same size. What's left to do in the middle is to loop through and copy every spot over. So through array.length, in the array called A, which is an integer array, I cast into an integer what's in the other array called array, spot I. I'm saying array a lot, but hopefully you guys are grasping. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I cast over the index value. Just like right here, I was traversing the array size. All right, so now we have a method called convert, which converts doubles into integers. We use that out here with output, because what we did right here was we created an int array of converted doubles. And then here, what we did was we outputted the converted array. So we did convert, and then we outputted it. Just like up here in this method, okay, we did all, anyways, let's run this now and see what happens when I try to output numbers. And it works. And now I'm going to output coins. Coins is an array of doubles. Now, when it does this, it's going to convert all those doubles into integers. So all those 0.25s will be just converted into zeros. So there's the numbers and there's the coins. Okay, as you can see, all the dime, the nickel, the dime, and the quarter were all just converted to zero, and the loonie and the toonie were just converted to whole numbers. Okay, so here you can see an array as a parameter, both cases, and we also saw inside this other method an array as a return value. Now what I want to do is make another array called randoms. I'm going to make a random method that has 3 parameters. Random number between 1 and 10, but I want you to make 50 of them. 50 of them will be put into this array called randoms. So this is a method that has 3 parameters and it returns an array. And then I'll be able to output those randoms using methods I already have. But let's create a method called random. Now you have to be careful here because we actually already had an array of random, a random method from our previous unit. Again, if I was to show you the Navigator here, we already had a method that generated a random integer. All right, so I'm going to call these low, high, and size. Sorry, my phone's ringing. Okay, so this will be a useful method. It will allow you to generate an array of numbers, which is a new integer array of this size, so it's initially empty. The end of this method, you return numbers. It's all filled up, okay? And you once again use a for loop to go through. In this case, I can just put size right here because that also works. And I say numbers, that's I, equals a random. Now I can just use the other random method that we already have, which just uses low and high to generate a random integer. And then we're done. So now it generates an entire array of random numbers. In this case, if we go back to where we called this method, right here. It's going to generate 50 random numbers between 1 and 10. So let's see how that looks. So the first output will be just the 99 numbers, mostly 0, then the coins, and now here, as you can see, is 50 numbers randomly generated between 1 and 10. You can look through and you can see all the 1s and 10s and all numbers in between. So that was really useful. Okay, a really useful way to incorporate methods and arrays together. The final piece of the arrays unit example is the multi-dimensional array, also known as a matrix. Okay, it's an array of arrays filled with values. Now, we're going to create a 2-dimensional matrix, but you could certainly make 3- and 4-dimensional ways as well. Please read the notes or look at the videos to grasp the concept of these, because this is definitely a little bit trickier to move from single-dimensional arrays to multi-dimensional arrays. Okay, so we're going to create a few things to get started here. We're going to create a few finals. The number of rows for this thing will be 30 rows. Columns for this thing will be 40 columns. So it's not a perfect square. It's 30 by 40. Character variables to generate this, rather than, we've already done integers and doubles. We even did strings, but we're going to use characters. So the lowest possible character that we can generate, just like a random number, will be lowercase letter a. It'll be the lowest character. And the highest possible character will be obviously Z. So from A to Z, we'll generate those. Okay. All right. So now let's create or declare a matrix, a character matrix. So with a multi-dimensional array, we use 2 sets or 3 sets or 4 sets of square brackets to indicate the multiple dimensions. Equals a new character. And then again, I use the 2 dimensions here. And in these second set of square brackets, that's where you define the dimensions. Or in this case, I'm going to use the keywords that I created up here. I'm going to say rows by columns. Now, reality is this is just the computer's memory. So it doesn't really matter which of these 2 in which order they go. That's up to you to sort out as you build a multi-dimensional array. Okay, so multi-dimensional arrays are definitely tricky, and you should definitely read or watch the video to get a better feel for it. Okay, so now we're going to fill this matrix by traveling through it and putting random characters in there. So I'm going to use, in this case, a for loop, but I'm going to rename the I variable row, less than rows. It's going to go up by 1. And then I'm going to use a nested for loop with column as my variable, going through all the columns. Okay. So with multi-dimensional arrays, you now need to use nested for loops into my matrix at this row, in this column. A random character that goes between low and high. Now, we don't have a method that generates a random character, so we're going to create one. Once again, it's not giving it to us as an option to use with the light bulb. So we're going to have to write it ourselves, which is fine. It is actually a 1-line method. It's not going to take long at all. So I'm just going to scroll down underneath the random method we had. I actually already have the comment ready for it. Okay. So to generate a random character, char random, char low, char high. Okay. All we need to do this is we're going to return cast into a character the other version of random, which uses integers. So now I'm going to cast into an integer low, and then cast into an integer high. One method to call on the other method. So it's just a real simple way to get random characters generated. Okay, now let's go back. So this should now generate that random matrix of characters, whole bunch of random matrix characters. All right, let's output it. Okay, and do this. We're going to once again overload our output method. Output our matrix. Because we don't have a version of output that deals with a two-dimensional array. So once again, I'm going to create this method. And I already have the comment for it. The comment. I'm going to say this is a matrix of character values. Okay, so let's write this particular method. And for this one, we're going to get things a little bit fancier. Okay, and this will be where we'll kind of wrap up today, and we'll finish this example. Once I'm done this example, the entire example will be put up onto GitHub. I'll push it up onto GitHub so you can bring the whole example down if you really want to. I definitely suggest you try it and follow along. I realize I went very quickly in this video, but you can certainly slow yourself down by watching the other videos I have, or even slow this video down if you'd like. Anyways, the next part of what I'm going to do is to basically output this two-dimensional array, but I'm also going to use a little bit of graphical type stuff to do this as well. All right, so I'm going to make a string of text equal to, I'm going to write a for loop. I'm going to use R for row, and I'm going to say M, because I'm going to rename this matrix M, okay? And I'm going to say M dot length, okay? Then the second for loop, I'm going to use C for column, and I'm going to say M bracket R dot length. And again, please read the notes or watch the video to understand why I'm setting up these two nested for loops this way. Text equals text plus the matrix at this row and this column plus a space. And when I get to the end of the columns, I'm also going to put a new line character in there. Okay, so output's going to do that. So for now, I'm just going to spit out that text onto the screen just to give a feel for it. So it should be a 30 by 40 matrix of characters, random characters. And here you can see it, right? So here you can see the random matrix, 30 by 40 of random characters. Actually, let me shrink that down a bit. There you go. So there it is. Right, there's the 30 by 40 matrix of random characters, okay? Generated as a two-dimensional array and then spit out onto the screen, okay? What I want to do after this, though, which, again, I think I'm going to stop the video for, put it in there and just suggest you look through it online, is create a series of what's the word I'm looking for? Of graphical objects to use. Graphical objects are not really a part of the arrays unit, but they are definitely something that is useful to look at. And oops, I'm wrong. I want to jump to show you what the code's going to look like. There we go. Okay. Scrolling down. All right. So here, this is the code we just wrote right here, all the way up to here. And this is the stuff that I'm planning to leave for you guys to look up in there. So how to set up graphical things. So here you can see I set up colors, one for the foreground, one for the background. I set up a font object. I even set up an image file that's sitting on my desktop, okay? And then I write another version of output that takes the font and the background and the foreground and the name of the image, along with the text, which is the thing I've been filling up the matrix, a title, and just below that is that method that has the title, the text, the font, the background, the foreground, the image name. And it uses this thing called a JText area to build up the font and the background and the foreground. And then it uses something called an icon to display the image. And it puts all of those things, the fancy display area and the fancy image, which I called picture, into a message dialog, which is a lot fancier than the way we have it. Obviously, you can see the next method below this is learning classes. That's our next unit, so we're not going to get there yet. And so that's going to conclude my look at arrays. And I hope you guys can look through that. Feel free to email me if you have any questions. You can certainly read through this a lot slower on my website. I just want to do this quick online video today. If anyone had any questions, they could just watch me do this whole example. My goal for next week will be, that example will be online, and I'll show you how I would have approached attempting one of the arrays programming problems. It'll be one of the tougher ones, to give you guys a walkthrough on one of those problems. Okay, everybody, stay healthy, and I'll see you guys next week.